We had began to craft our own weapons, but Griffin was still very much a beginner and could only craft rusty junk. We waited for him to get better in time. As he learns his skill, we buy blueprints, such as a blueprint for sabres. This allows him to then craft sabres. We'll be looking for these weapon blueprints when we sell our copper. We also continue to do runs to stack to buy iron plates in order for Griffin to be able to smith them into weapons. Meanwhile, those that continued to mine became more and more competent at defending themselves. Even when we were outnumbered, we could win these fights. Our skills were improving. Our melee attack and melee defence was at a reasonable level, which meant that we could defend ourselves against most normal opponents. Our field medic skill was also gradually improving. This is also an important skill. Griffin became a regular customer to stack. We continued to fight the dust bandits. They set up a camp near our base and began jumping us on the roads. It was times like these there was an opportunity to see just how good our skills at fighting had become. If we wanted to venture far out from the hub, we'd need to learn how to handle dust bandits comfortably. We'd win one fight and then more would come and we'd fight again. As the battles continued, their casualties would always be worse than ours. And in these fights, it's winner takes all. Our ability to withstand continuous battle and win fights was increasing. We treated our wounded and we had a short rest. Then, it was time to give back to the dust bandits what they had given us. We began our assault by picking them off one by one to thin out their numbers. Some wild Garu also began attacking the bandits, giving us a perfect distraction. There was a brief respite before we finished off the rest of the camp. After the battle, we used their camp to rest, while slave traders collected what we had left of them. But we hadn't left much. In pursuit of his ever-growing need of iron plates, Griffin explored Okrin's Gulf, finding holy farms, and eventually he found Blister Hill. He explored the town, bought plates, and then began the long journey home. He of course had to pray on the way back, which was likely the real reason for the trip the entire time. As he passed Savfk, he picked up electrical components too, as we planned to add wind turbines to our hub for our growing power needs. We then purchased the large bug house. Silvershade felt he could best serve us by being a tailor and a merchant, like his father and his father before him, apparently. We needed comfortable beds to help recover from our battle wounds. This seemed more comfortable than a rooftop. In order to continue to improve our weaponsmithing technology, we had to use enhanced research and go up to level 3 research. Griffin was getting better each day. He dreamed of one day making holy Okran weapons that would rival a skeleton's, but to be that good, he may need to learn from the skeletons. A forbidden thought. In general, Logan continued to do an array of different kinds of research that would all come in useful in the future. Soon, Griffin made a Catan No. 1 blade, a remarkable improvement if not partly a fluke. Auron was happy to take it as it was a big improvement from her weapon. It was also time to start making our own clothes. Leather armour is also a category of clothing we will want. For his first work, Silvershade made himself a rattan hat, the non-iron variety made from fabric and leather. His craftsmanship was the lowest possible quality, prototype, but in time he would become the best. It was at this point that Silvershade decided that he wanted to trade and to help share the load with Griffin. He left for Savfk without telling the others. That was a mistake. The Holy Nation do not take kindly to his kind. There was no denying that he was fast, very fast. Hivers were known for their amazing run speed, but in the Holy Nation they were also known as demons of narco, and Griffin was the rare exception in terms of open-mindedness. En route, dust bandits tried to chase him, but he quite comfortably led them to the Savfk Holy Guards. The guards were not pleased, and he had to leave quickly. Oh, shit. He would instead head to Squin, where perhaps the Sheikh would accept him. He arrived and they let him in. He quickly bought a trader's backpack and filled it with supplies. He decided to hit the bars too and meet some of the Sheikh. In the bar, he met Kang. Kang and Silvershade got along like a house on fire. Kang thought Hivers were weak, and Silvershade was keen to prove him wrong. They'd see who protected who. They argued for a while, but Silvershade realised that they didn't have the funds to hire him. A quick deposit of copper to our favourite customer in the hub, and the funds would be guaranteed to be able to hire our new companion, Kang. As they left, it became obvious that Kang was willing to pick a fight with just about anyone. He effectively called the 100 Guardian a bunch of clowns for asking to search him, and they seemed to respect that. We would soon need their help though, as the dust bandits had been waiting for us just outside. These foolish dust bandits should not have bothered the Sheikh. They are not likely to forgive. Silvershade's leg was badly wounded, but him and Kang continued to fight on. They managed to win the fight, and they had earned each other's respect. Silvershade's leg was badly injured. They would need to go back and rest. Silvershade tried to use a splint to heal it, but the leg was too badly damaged. He would be limping for a long time. He would need bed rest. Kang's leg wasn't injured. He just mocked the hiver all the way back to Squin. Eventually Kang stopped mocking Silvershade and he carried him to the bar hotel. Silvershade's rest was quickly interrupted by a sheik who didn't like bugmen in his town. Silvershade showed that he was not afraid of the sheik. What Silvershade feared was being alone. He admired the camaraderie of the sheik. And as a hiver, his fears were complex and deep. He feared being disconnected from the world. He feared becoming insane. He feared turning into a fogman. The sheik did not scare him. With that, he could go to sleep. Just as he was about to fall asleep, he noticed that someone had been listening to his conversation. It was Voth. Voth was an untrained servant who wanted the opportunity to fight and die in battle. His price was cheap, and Silvershade was glad to hire him. At last, Silvershade was able to sleep, and he was able to sleep to the music of the sheik battling dust bandits below. In the morning, they were able to head home. Silvershade's fragile leg still needed time to recover. Voth, who was completely unskilled at fighting, had to learn the basics. He and Kang soon had to get acquainted with the locals. Kang was handling himself admirably, being able to hold his own against many, many opponents. We hadn't even given them good equipment, as Griffin still needed to improve at smithing, and we hadn't learned the blueprint yet for katanas. Eventually, Voth fell, but we didn't leave Kang hanging. The two sheik warriors would need time to rest, but they done well in the battle. Fighting outnumbered will help them improve quicker and is what they prefer. We learned the blueprint to be able to make katanas, and Griffin was steadily improving at weaponsmithing. He could now potentially craft a katan number 3. A katan number 3 is a very well made and sharp blade, but he hadn't actually successfully made one yet. Another crappy refitted, which is rusty and not very sharp. Silvershade continued to visit Squin quite often. He had gotten what he wanted and became a trader and a clothes maker, like his father and his father before him, apparently. In order to continue to improve our weaponsmithing, we were going to need to find an advanced science book. Advanced science books are rare and can often only be found near and around where the old world sits. The entire squad met to discuss where they could find an ancient textbook. A few ideas were floated, and everyone agreed that skeletons were the most likely to have them, and they would be out in the Black Desert City, one of the most treacherous places known. To get to the Black Desert City, they would need to head east, further east than they've ever travelled before. They stocked up on medical supplies that they would no doubt need, and then they headed out. They found travelling nomads on the route and decided to buy a pack bull from them to help carry some of the loads. We were a little bit swindled as they sold us a pack bull that was healthy, but it didn't actually have any cargo packs to carry things on it, so we just had something to feed. We then realised that in our rush to leave, we'd forgotten to pack food, so we had a meeting and decided we'd head back, as it was too dangerous to go without food. If we were malnourished, we'd be weak and vulnerable. Just as we were heading home, dust bandits found us and decided to pick a fight, so we accepted. We rested for a short while, but we needed food, so we headed home. We met the dust bandits once more, just as we were about to get home. Our skills at fighting had been improving, and even though we were injured, the dust bandits didn't stand much of a chance. This time, we'd head north to the floodlands. We would need to pass through Holy Nation territory, which means it was not a good idea to take the Shek, who are mortal enemies with the Holy Nation, or a Hiver, who they think is a demon. As we approached the floodlands, we knew that our biggest threat was mechanical security spiders, remnants of the old world. Most of these robot spiders no longer functioned, but it was hard to tell the difference between one that was alive and one that wasn't. There appeared to be no life here in the floodlands, with the exception of these security spiders that had been patrolling for Okran knows how many years. If you value your life or your limbs, you're best to avoid those security spiders. Unexpectedly, there was also broken skeletons. These strange skeletons had lost their mind over time. It was in our interest to avoid them too. We spotted a tower that hadn't collapsed, and we headed there for some shelter. As they approached, they saw another skeleton, but this one seemed to be sane. His name was Burn, and not only was he friendly, but he was also an adventurer. After speaking to the Wanderer for a while and hearing about our plans, he decided he wanted to join us. He was very old, he told us, and this would be his last adventure. So this was Burn's tower, and notably it had a skeleton bed, which is something he'll need to properly heal in the future. You see, skeletons can fully heal themselves with toolkits, but they do slowly degrade over time permanently, unless they use a skeleton bed. We searched the other towers and began to head home, but on the way back, we ran into a spider. We managed to win, although it did hurt us quite badly. To make sure it can't get back up, we remove its electrical components. We'd also been collecting strange ancient artifacts that we'd been finding, and we'd found an ancient book as well. And then we found a few more. We managed to get out of the floodlands, but we had a new problem. The Holy Nation do not like skeletons. We would need to avoid the Holy Nation, which we were doing so to one of their outposts, when we realised it was overrun by fogmen. These were hivers who'd gone insane and turned into man-eaters. We would need to avoid them too. Our new skeleton companion, Burn, was a fountain of knowledge. It was a great mystery how skeletons worked, or where they came from. Who made them, or did they make themselves somehow? Of course, Burn did not know the answer to all of these questions, but he did know a lot about skeletons, what with him being one. As we travelled, we were trying to curtail the Holy Nation and their many mines or farms. We were definitely taking the scenic route, but we had good conversation with our new friend Burn. I wonder who this Catlon is. Seemingly, in Burn's long lifespan, Catlon was the most nefarious and notorious legend that he knew about. The Wanderer did suspect that Burns was maybe being a little biased. Everyone knew the Bugmaster was the greatest legend in Kenshi, a man who can control the spiders. But the Wanderer was keen to meet this Catlon one day. Now that we had an advanced book, we could learn advanced weaponsmithing. Burns would become the second weaponsmith for Sharpened Hope. Everyone knew that skeletons made the most sought-after weapons in all of Kenshi. Unfortunately, Burns had wiped his memory of smithing at some point and would have to start from the basics, but he had a good tutor in Griffin, the most unlikely of partnerships. At the same time, Logan was constructing an advanced smithing station for Griffin, which would allow him to make more reliably cat-on quality and above. The new station would require both metal and fabrics to make cat-on quality weapons and above. He wasted no time in getting started right away making katanas. For his first weapon, he managed to make an Odachi cat-on No. 2, and he gifted it to his fellow smith, Burns. He then made a cat-on plank for Ruka. Our wealth was increasing, and we decided to use the money to redevelop the hub. During our trade trips, we bought skeleton repair kits, which are very expensive, but the only way to heal a skeleton other than skeleton repair beds. We also bought a map to the Shek Kingdoms, letting us know where Admag and other fortresses were. We finished the repairs and improved the hub once more. It became obvious why skeletons were such good smiths. They could work tirelessly around the clock, never needing to sleep or eat or anything else. We began to stock up on a lot of building material. Our next goal was to build our own base. Building our own base would be difficult and dangerous, as we could have enemies come and try and siege us. But the benefits are that we could cut out the middlemen and no longer have to buy resources to craft. We could harvest the resources ourselves, either by mining or by farming. Our plan was to build south from the hub, which was both a territory of arid terrain and swamp, meaning we could grow rice and bread. Big Joe would be pivotal in getting the cargo out there to where we need to build. We had one last big meeting before we headed out to discuss the plan and discuss the dangers. Everyone agreed that this is what they wanted to do. Out there, we wouldn't have the safety of the hub and the protection of the shinobi ninjas. We'd have to defend everything for ourselves. We did a bit of surveying in the area to look for water, stone, iron, copper, and we found a semi-decent spot. As we were near the swamp, there was some discussion about the dangers of the swamp. One of the most dangerous creatures in the swamp are blood spiders. Not only will they swarm you in numbers, but if they find you lying on the ground, they will eat you. That's without even considering the several gangs that locate themselves in the swamp. With all the warnings said and done, we got to work. We quickly ran out of iron plates, and Griffin and Silvershade continued to do supply runs for us. But after a time we could produce our own iron plates now. On one of his trips to the way station, Silvershade noticed 2 hive princes sitting exactly where Rigsy had met him. Their names were Zim and Zam, and they seemed to be freshly hiveless given their lack of personality. Of course, Silvershade hired them both. Princes are rare, but unfortunately they hate labour, which is something we're going to have to be doing a lot of right now. We would have much more preferred hive workers or hive soldiers. But he also hired tech hunters as bodyguards for the next 2 days to help secure the new base. Griffin also hired our old friends the mercenaries to join us too. We could never be too safe out there in the middle of nowhere. And it's just as well we did, as the Dust Bandits soon learned of our location and came for revenge. With the help of the tech hunters, the battle was extremely easy. So, we were confident and we got back to work, building our new base. It goes without saying that we wanted smithing stations built as soon as possible. But we would also need research, and for that we're probably going to need more buildings and a lot more construction material, iron, everything. There's a lot of work up ahead. With the combined strength of bodyguards, we decided that we would venture into the swamp. Ideally, we wanted to find rice so we could start growing our own. At the same time, Zim and Zam collected some of Griffin's unused Cat-in-1 katanas and began their training. It was night time and the jungle was very dark. They managed to find a place called Rot, and also some creatures called swamp raptors that seemed to be benign and leave them alone, for now. When they got to Rot, unfortunately, the only shop in town was closed for the night. They decided they could wait a few hours for it to open, but their plans quickly changed. The Black Dragon ninjas had found our base, and they were going to take everything. These ninjas were much stronger opponents than Dust Bandits. We'd need to get our mercenaries back here as soon as possible. In typical skeleton fashion, Burns fought like a machine. No matter how many of them there were and how many were hitting him, he stayed standing. But eventually, he fell. At the same time, Rigsy got up and distracted them and gave us just enough time for reinforcements to arrive. Even Zim and Zan made it in time, but they brought starving bandits with them, which were easily dispatched with. We had successfully defended our new home. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.